to bring me happy. Ooh. Thank you, happy.
Hello, Trekkies, and welcome back for another exciting edition of the Captain's Log. You all know me as the ambassador to the fans, Bryan Kreutz, and with me, as always, is the exuberantly effervescent Lili Fox-Lim, without whom I could never do this show.
Oh, I don't know about that, but thank you, VK. It's usually at this point that we would also be introducing our former Coco host, who was fond of Coco, but having been transferred to another assignment in a remote part of the galaxy during our off-season hiatus, we wish you well, Raj.
Oh, we do. Right you are, Lili. However, I have a sneaking suspicion that before Raj starts his cryo-freeze for his experimental procedure, he's tuning into our show from one of our subspace frequencies that broadcast from the many TV stations that we air on nationwide.
The many stations such as Comcast Open Signal in Portland, Oregon, Manhattan Neighborhood Network in New York, plus many others.
Absolutely. So many affiliates across this great nation of ours. But best of all, let's not forget that we stream worldwide on the web. Look for our show, A Captain's Log. It's called The Captain's Log Show on YouTube, as well as the Deteron TV channel on your Roku TV.
Yeah, and it's great to be on so many wonderful stations to bring our Trek-expertise and love for Trek around the globe. Hey, Bryan.
Yes, Lili?
Let's get to some Star Trek news, shall we?
Absolutely.
What you got for us?
All right, Lili, we got a lot of good Star Trek news. I'm glad you asked because there's been a lot of buzz going around, particularly lately around the productions of all the current series. You know, right now there's 5 current Star Trek series running. And there's renewed talks for a 4th and possibly final Kelvin Universe cast Star Trek feature film.
Okay.
Now, this would be the 14th film in Star Trek's long-lived franchise. No one has had any more except for the Bond franchise. And it all seems like these actors are all on board with wanting to move along with production. Negotiations definitely are playing a big role in the stalling of the timeline to get a new movie for Star Trek produced over there at Paramount.
Of course, and not to mention getting a plot and a script together that we will be interested in to see what they got. And I also hear that there's talk about a takeover bid for Paramount Global, the owners of the Star Trek franchise. I've also heard in an interview from Michelle Hurd, who played Raffi on Star Trek Picard, that the new proposed series, Star Trek Legacy, is pretty much a lock.
Yes, a lock.
Would you believe?
That's truly a bit of good high hopes, Lili. Now, if Terry Matalas has anything to do about it, and he does!
He does.
This is news that is only going to get better and better with time. Remember, finalized production on the Section 31 film with Michelle Yeoh is set to be a superb installment with Yeoh leading the cast. Now, can't wait for that. Can you, Lili?
Me neither. No, you know I'm excited because I love Michelle Yeoh. The sooner the better on that one.
Right.
We want more and more Trek always, and we want to see Michelle Yeoh.
Yes, we
Not
do.
just me. I mean, she's brilliant.
She is brilliant, absolutely.
Okay, Paramount, listen, Skydance, heed my words. You know we have the financial means and support, and we will spend it to make a serious Star Trek product, so give it to us on the heels of Star Trek Picard's success. Okay? You know, BK, if we don't want to wait any longer, I don't think it's fair to make our viewers wait either.
Yes.
Okay, so it's time to move on to our Trek of a treat. He's an original series actor, but has also appeared in 2 other Star Trek spin-off series.
Yes, but you said it so well and very articulately, so Paramount, listen up, please. But indeed he has. Our guest was only a young kid when he appeared in the Season 1 Trek Original Series episode back in 1966 called Miri, and he had no speaking lines. However, later he appeared twice in heavy makeup in Deep Space Nine, where you might not have immediately recognized him. But his most notable appearance, at least to me, and probably to Lili, is the Voyager Season 6 episode, One Small Step.
Ooh, One Small Step. If you haven't guessed by now, maybe you might have spotted him in another series, Seinfeld,
Yes!
Changing Genres, where he played the role of Kramer's flamboyant attorney, Jackie Childs. His name is Phil Morris, and he just signaled us that he's opened his hailing frequencies to begin the interview with us today.
A Captain's Log returns in a moment.
Welcome back to A Captain's Log. Phil Morris is a practitioner of Wing Chun under the late Sifu Hawkins Chung until his passing in 2019. Wing Chun, a concept-based Chinese martial art and form of self-defense, is to be respected, as is Phil Morris.
Yes, slowly indeed. Many of the talents in practicing Wing Chun is what Phil Morris is all about. He's a force to be reckoned with.
Should we practice some Klingon calisthenics? I happen to know a few moves myself.
Oh, well, wait a minute. Wait. Last time we had a costume wardrobe malfunction, so when we were in combat and we battled, I ripped my uniform. So maybe we're just beginning this episode. Costuming may not like that in time for a change. It's the beginning of the episode, so maybe next time?
Okay, agreed.
Okay.
We can rain check for now, but don't think this is over.
All right. Yes, I'm always up for a stunt challenge with you, Lily. For now, though, let's get to our interview with Phil Morris.
Let's welcome Philip Morris to our quadrant of the galaxy here on Star Trek's only broadcast TV talk show. Welcome to A Captain's Log.
Thanks for having me. I am truly honored.
Now, Phil, acting definitely seems to be in the family genes. Your father, Greg Morris, worked on the Desilu set as an actor on the Mission Impossible TV series that was running concurrently with Star Trek, the original series. In fact, your father had the only screen main cast role to have been retained on the series when it relaunched back in 1988. Now, did your father help you land your very first acting role in Star Trek Season 1 in that episode, Miri? And what do you remember?
Well, yeah. I was just a kid, I must have been like all of 8 years old or something like that. And my sister Iona and I both were in that episode. It was a bit of a stunt cast because they wanted kids who weren't actors but knew how to contain themselves, how to behave themselves on a set. Who better than actors' kids who know when to be quiet when they say action and who know when to act up when they say or stop when they say cut, So that was kind of the way it was. If you look at any of the pictures of us from then, we have no clue what's going on. I mean, we really are just kids being told, move here, run there, do stuff. And it was an amazing episode. There's a scene where, to tell, tales, where we called her a screaming Mimi. The episode is, as you gained a certain age, you got a disease, horrible disease. And so we arrested our development. So all the kids were old, but because we arrested our physical development, we didn't get that disease. But every so often you'd run across an adult or grup that would have this disease. And so there was a scene with us in a schoolroom, which I'm sure everybody remembers. And this screaming Mimi, this grup, goes running through and scares the crap out of all of us. They didn't tell me that was happening. When they said act, I didn't know that was going to go on. So I don't know what other kids knew that was happening, but I definitely did not know. And I was scared out of my wits because, Star Trek was so real for the time and spared no expense. And, I was a kid and I was very into comics and fantasy. And so, I kind of guess why I wanted it to be real, but it was truly scary. So if you watch it again, you see us screaming and running out of the schoolhouse or schoolroom. It's actual fear.
You sold the scene with that fear. Phil, your debut on the silver screen also was with Star Trek. It was in the opening scenes of Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. By this time, you've had a couple of gigs and a chance to gather some working experience under your belt with TV roles. But again, this is a fairly small part of your motion picture premiere. Tell us how the casting process went, and did working with William Shatner and crew from the television series again bring up some old memories for you?
Leonard Nimoy was the director of Star Trek 3.
Oh, that's right.
And Leonard Nimoy had been, when he left Star Trek, he came to Mission Impossible and was a regular on Mission Impossible. So he was one of the stars of my father's show. So we met him way before Star Trek 3 and had a lot of dealings with him and his family and his son. In fact, our father told us specifically when we met him on the set of Mission Impossible, do not go up to him and do this. Do not do it. He is not that guy anymore. He's in a whole new vibe. Please don't do that. So what's the first thing we did when we saw him? Live long and prosper, Mr. Nimoy. He loved it. We looked at our father like, what's wrong with you? He loved that. But he cast me in Mission Impossible, in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. I auditioned for him. I went to his office. I read. I got the part. I worked one day. It was the very first day of the show, of the movie. And in the makeup room, it was like being in a family reunion. They hadn't seen each other in years, since 2. and a couple of years at least. And it was like everybody seeing each other again, and hugs all around, and love, and the makeup trailer in the room, and it was just a good time. And because I did know them and had familiarity with them from before, I was not nervous at all. I had no anxiety or anxiousness about playing any role or saying anything to Mr. Shatner. He was Mr. Shatner to me. You know what I mean? He wasn't really Admiral Kirk at that time.
Yeah.
He was Mr. Shatner. And so when you see me talking to him and I'm smiling at him, it's like, that's my dad's friend. You know what I mean? It was really very, 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 very cool. So years later, I do a convention. I mean, decades later. And Mr. Nimoy is one of the guest stars. He's one of the guest people at this convention. It's a big Star Trek convention, obviously, because for him to come would be huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're sitting in the audience, and we go back to the green room, and I don't know if he really knows me. You know what I mean? I mean, it's Leonard Nimoy. I mean, and so I said, you know, Mr. Nimoy, it's so good to see you again. I don't know if you remember, but you cast me in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. He goes, Philip, I'm so proud of your career. Of course I remember you. I'm so happy with the work you've done. And oh my goodness, your comedy is so, I mean, he knew. And so that just shows you the kind of connectivity some of these really big stars have. And one of the reasons why they are big stars and they are so successful, because they have a great sense of humanity and they have a great reservoir of compassion. And he was no different.
Oh, Nimoy was such an inspiration and an actor's favorite director. PK, you and I both loved Leonard Nimoy.
Yes, we do. He was simply the best, Lils. Phil, were you nervous at all to work with these stars on set, even if you kind of knew them a little bit?
Well, it wasn't, I didn't know them. I had a familiarity, right? I was familiar with them, so it wasn't first blush, yeah? And so that's always good for an actor. And to be honest with you, I'm an artist. I'm a fan of a lot of things. I am not a Trekkie. Just like when I did Seinfeld. I'm not a Seinfeld fan. I love the show. And here's what I think about that. I think it's better not to be a big fan of a show or somebody that you're going to work with, because it can daunt your power. You can tuck it under because you put them on such a pedestal. That's happened to me in my career. And it hasn't worked out ever. And so what I really like to do is kind of compartmentalize the size of the experience, and so that I can do it. You know, my character, the bridge engineer, has no idea he's doing a movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
My characters don't know they're doing a TV show. They don't know that Star Trek is the biggest thing since sliced bread. They have no idea. They only know the reality that's set before them. So when I put myself in that place as an actor, it doesn't matter who was in front of me. It was Admiral Kirk. That's who was in front of me. I was a bridge engineer trainee. That's my job. So when you see the earnestness in me, it's because I haven't been to battle. I don't know. I'm a neophyte. So for me as the actor, it helps to engage in the reality of the situation as opposed to the size of the experience, if that makes sense.
Now, Phil, what were the major differences for you as an actor that you had to adjust to from filming for TV versus movies?
Time frame. The time you get to accomplish anything in television is much more truncated than in features. In features, it's kind of like the rule of thumb used to be a page a day, right? So you do 1 page a day. So if you had a 120-page script, obviously that's 120 days. That is different now, but still fairly similar. And in television now, because of streaming, for example, I did Doom Patrol for HBO Max, and we spent 10 days, 8 to 10 days to shoot an episode, where before we'd spend 5 days to 6 days, maybe 7 to shoot an episode. Now they spend a little bit more time. They have a little bit more money. They're doing fewer episodes, 10 to 12 episodes as opposed to 22, 24, 26. And so you get a little bit more time now in the Netflixy, Hulu-y world than you did before. But I think the biggest difference is prep time and time to execute your work. I know in Doom Patrol, I would have Zoom rehearsals with Javan Wade, who played my son. I played his father, Silas Stone, and Victor Stone's Cyborg, so that we could get our rehearsals in. So we hit the stage, we could hit it running. because we knew that there was no time to get it done. You have no time to kind of like, well, what's my motivation? And it's like, no. We got a rehearsal for camera A, you mark it. All right, one blocking, run through, and then you're shooting, baby. So you have to really prep before you get to set in a television show. In features, you have a little bit more time.
Yes, time is of the essence. Interesting to see those differences in production today.
Perhaps one of your more well-known roles on Star Trek is when you played Lieutenant John Kelly in the Star Trek Voyager Season 6 episode, One Small Step, where you were the commander of the Ares 4 mission to Mars. Can you talk about the challenges of filming a scene in a place with zero gravity? I mean, were you flying on a harness for the weightlessness scenes?
Well, the zero gravity was a small portion of the challenge. The bigger challenge was that I did the whole show by myself. I didn't have any other actors.
Really?
Or no other actors that I had no scenes with another actor.
Yeah.
So the director was Robert Picardo, who played the Doctor. And Robert Picardo and I had the same acting coach for years and years. So we knew each other well. We knew each other's process well. He knew how to speak the same language to me. That was the real challenge, was to create a life and an interaction. See, when I say that to people, they're like, really? I didn't have anybody else? No, it was just me and the ship. It was me and some dilemmas. It was me and some emergency stuff. And in the beginning, I have some communication with Earth just before I lose all communication with everybody. So of course I have no communication with anybody except for myself. And I'm only speaking to myself, which was really a great exercise as an actor. So that was the biggest challenge. Doing the weightlessness stuff, no, I was not in a harness. I was in a rig that strapped my legs in, and so I would have to hinge my back and do it like that, or I would have to use my abs and do it like that. So it was all me. It was, if I wasn't in good shape, that show would never, we'd still be shooting it. And so then they would wheel me from place to place, and I would be in this position going from place to place, you know what I mean? But I would have to plange or plane myself to get to that position. And you see me going towards like the control panel, that's me holding my back as they have strapped me into a rig. It's, yeah, it was physically taxing, as it were.
I can't imagine how difficult using the rig must have been. Your performance in this episode is so convincing.
It is.
It really is, and well done. Even though there were no other actors in the scene with you, from an actor's perspective, how do you deal with working completely solo without other actors to bounce energy off of? Like Lili and I do. Talk about this, Phil.
It was a great exercise as an artist, as an actor, to create a life, an inner life, an outer life, solely on your own, so that it existed only for you, because there was no other energy for it to bounce off of. So to me, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a noise? And the answer would be no, because you need a receptor.
You do.
You need the receiver of the sound in order for it to make the sound. So if you don't have a receiver of the sound, there's really virtually no sound. Because even if you say, okay, there's vibrations, but you don't hear that unless you have a receiver. So that's the same as this. I'm having to play both parts, the receiver and the speaker. As an exercise, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And Bobby gave me the best direction, which was, if you don't accomplish this, none of what we ever shot before will ever exist.
That's really setting a precedent.
John Kelly doesn't accomplish this.
Yeah.
Nothing that Gene Roddenberry does or did from here on would ever exist. And that was just like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah. I mean, what a great direction. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and he doesn't have to say anything. He's not acted for me. He just gives me that little spark to fire.
Having enjoyed all your acting performances, Lili and I do, I really think my personal favorite would have to be a portrayal of Thopok on Deep Space Nine, a Klingon sworn to protect the House of Grilka. In the episode Looking for Parmok in all the wrong places, you pulled it off masterfully, Phil. Take us through the prep and execution of this role.
I Thopok is an interesting one. I mean, talk about Thopok, such a bad Klingon, they kick him out of the Klingon Federation. They're like buck him down. He's like buck private at the end of it. It's like, get out of here.
Yeah.
That was wonderful because they gave me an actual batleth to bring home and practice with.
Really?
Yeah, actual. And it was heavy.
Huh?
And I'm a martial arts guy, right? I do swords. I mean, I'm not a sword expert. I'm more of an empty hand guy, but I know swords and I know all this stuff. So I took it down here I live at the beach, and I took it down to the lifeguard station, and I'm just wheeling it and flipping it and doing stuff and rolling in the sand. And, the lifeguard's driving by like, bro, you all right? So that was great. Working with Armin Shimmerman was great. The director was Andrew Robinson, and he was fantastic. I mean, listen, every experience I've ever had in the Star Trek universe, I use all those adjectives: fantastic, amazing, crazy, great, because it is. I mean, that's why it's been around so long. That's why you feel the way you feel about One Small Step, because it doesn't matter what episode. There's going to be somebody who's going to connect to something in it because they're so dense. They're so nuanced. They're a moral play. They're a moral play. That's what they are. And they're morality plays. And so, yeah, man, every experience I've ever had has been fantastic. Thopok was fun, but to me, not as fun as Third Ramata Clan.
Lili, I wish I was wielding a Klingon batleth instead of this dagger.
Ooh, that'd be pretty cool. But I feel like, do you think you're allowed to wield the batleth as an ambassador?
No,
like, I feel like that's probably
so.
not like.
No.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, thank you.
I've been meaning to tell you.
Klingon! Spectre of treachery! What does it mean?
I just, a sharp knife is worth nothing without a sharp eye!
Ah.
The Klingon Spectre of Treachery represents the Klingon spirit that inhabits Grathor, which represents the betrayal of fellow warriors!
Very nicely done.
But we are one, as they say in the Strange New Worlds theme song.
Wow, impressive, Lili. Very nicely done.
Thank you.
Let's check in with Phil to see how his Klingon audition went on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. But really, I think you nailed it, Lili.
Thank
That
you.
was good.
The thing is, they never gave me any of these parts. I auditioned for every one of them. They were like, hey, yeah, he's great. He's done this and that. No. Come in here, dance on our desk, and prove it to us again. So I go in for Third Ramata Clan. And they say to me, Phil, you played a Klingon. I said, yes, I did. They said, you were very good. Thank you so much. They said, well, Klingons think that they're the baddest dudes in the universe. The Jem Hadar actually are. So they don't have to growl and scream and snarl.
Yeah.
They're quiet assassins. So that's how I did the audition. Got it. Played it, had an amazing experience with Avery Brooks and the cast and crew of that show. I think it's another seminal episode. I think it's a very unique one because never had there been a third that had led the proceedings. It's always been first or second, or the Vorta in terms of a Jem Hadar storyline. We had run out of our Ketracel White, which was our essential life's blood, and so. It was just a very interesting, I thought, it's weird because I played a lot of aliens on the show and all of them have been very human.
A captain's log returns in a moment.
You've returned to your only broadcast television source for Star Trek news and interviews. Star Trek has been blessed to have such a versatile actor grow up on screen and play such a variety of film and TV roles in multiple decades. That's Phil Morris. He's our guest today. Let's continue our discussion.
Okay, so Phil, going back to 1988, we mentioned earlier that your father reprised his role as Barney Collier in the hit franchise Mission Impossible. And aside from the voiceover for the tape or the disc, he's the only main character to reappear. So you this time, however, got to play the son to your father, not just in real life, but on screen as well. How cool is that? Please tell us how that unique casting decision was made and the direction you were given for the role. What was it like playing with your father on that series?
Well, Peter Graves was also in the show, so he was our leader. So he's another one from the original, although he was not the original leader of the IMF force. That was Stephen Briggs, who was played by, gosh, why did his name just go out of my head? Anyway, he was the original Dan Briggs, actually, and it was Stephen Hill was the actor who ended up going on to Law and Order. At any rate, yeah, it was a writer's strike in 1988, and no one could write a word without getting sued. So they still had to come up with product, and they thought about Mission Impossible because it was so far ahead of its time, and they could actually use each episode as it was, update the technology, and not change a word of dialogue at all. So that, in their infinite wisdom, is what they decided to do. The call went out for everybody. You know, they had they were all the original character names because it was a writer's strike. They couldn't change names. So Barney Collier was the character, Roland Hand, Cinnamon Carter, Jim Phelps, who was Peter Graves, so he already had the role. So all of us auditioned for those original characters. And I was the last one to go in. I had all my friends go in. My dad and I thought, no, they'll never hire me. It's too close, too on the nose. No one will buy it. Until, I got an audition. And so I went into Paramount, and I read, and I was good enough, came back, read again. And then we all went to what they called the network read, which is you go in and you have chemistry reads with the other characters, and you read your stuff by yourself, and then you make a contract, your contract, and they go away, and then they decide on who gets the part. And I got it, which was amazing. And I got it, and I got the part of Barney Collier because there was a writer's strike. They couldn't change the name. So I in fact, initially got my father's role, which was, it was surreal. It was like that I would be an actor, that I would be of a certain age, that a writer's strike would precipitate this show coming, that it was just too much. My father and I just were blown away by the whole thing.
This concludes the first part of the interview with Phil Morris. Trekkies, be sure to come back next week for the conclusion of our interview with Phil Morris.
Yes, we have come full circle from the original series to Star Trek films, all the way to Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Don't miss us next week with Phil Morris for part 2.
Yes, bye for now.
Hello, happy, my old friend. I'm glad you've manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happy.